So the community question is like, how do you evaluate assets against each other to find the best option for you?
Well, I want to give the really boring answer first. It's like, you look at your goal and then you look at the results and you find people. It's I'm not answering it that way. You can see I gave up halfway through it. I have a very, very interesting new perspective on this. I used to be quite obsessed with the idea of like, okay, well, if I put $1,000 into property A versus property B, or 100,000 or whatever it is, like what's the result difference going to be? And then what if it was, okay, what if instead I put that money into my super, or I did shares, or I reinvested it in my business? Like I really did used to just go about it in that way and like was trying to evaluate like return focus. And I've realized for me that that's been kind of like not actually the thing I do anymore. Like it's not actually how I evaluate it. So I had this like, as you asked me this question, like, because we do prep the questions, guys. I'm sure you can see we're not answering these randomly.
We spent a lot of time making sure we give a lot of value to everyone.
Yeah, I actually think the way I go about it now rather than doing that is I don't do those comparisons in the same way. I actually am evaluating opportunities based on where I'm at. It's kind of, I've had this perspective shift of going, well, I'm not, for example, and I'm just going to voice it, is I'm not evaluating property versus shares like I was anymore at all.
Yep.
I've become like, I've found something that really works for me, which is business and property. So now what I'm really trying to do, or when I'm evaluating it, is just evaluating what works on doubling down on what's already working for me.
Yep.
So when I look at this, I'm not, and the reason for that I really want to highlight is that I've got such a strong working system here now for myself that even if I could get a better return, let's say in crypto, right, that the return is double, there's so much new information I have to learn. There's so much new infrastructure I have to build to manage it. Like there's new platforms I'll have to have. There's new reporting I'll have to have. And even if the returns are there, the cost internally for me to deliver that is high. And I'll use an analogy here that I hope people can relate to. It's like you've got a business that's really, really good at, let's just use Facebook ads. You've got all the team for Facebook ads. You've got good margins on your Facebook ads. Your client managers know how to do Facebook ads. Right, so you've got this efficient thing working for you. And then suddenly you go, well, actually the margin is better if we start doing green metal mining. And it's like, okay, all this infrastructure is useless.
Yep.
So
fundamentally different.
Yeah. So this evaluation point for me now has become very different, where it's like, it's more than like just how the asset performs or what the asset is, or if I like the asset or my view on the asset. It's also based on the type of infrastructure I have in my wealth business.
Yep.
Like what's the right asset for my wealth business to be able to do well on? And I think that's going to be very, very different for everyone. Like we know people that are very talented at crypto, and like for them, I think it would be silly for them to move into property. Like they have a really good, I'm just going to call it degenerate skill set, where it's like they understand things that are just on this other level. And then we also have other friends where it's like, I know a guy right now that legitimately is like savant at trading shares. Like his brain is wired completely differently. So for him to be going out and doing a property inspection makes no sense.
Completely different skill set.
Yeah. So I'm almost like the evaluation of assets to me now, I am evaluating through the lens of my wealth business. Where can my wealth business do well? What is the opportunities that my wealth business can capitalize on, just like my business or my active business can capitalize on? So that is the lens I am now approaching asset evaluation through.
And that's completely different to how you originally did it, right?
Fundamentally. There was actually another episode of this podcast that we took down where it was like a property versus crypto versus shares thing, because that was pure asset evaluation. And I was like, I just don't see it that way anymore. I just don't.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you go that way, because I think a lot of people like look towards having that level of scalability. Because I would argue that a lot of what you've got in place, and even myself, and sort of quite a few people who we know listen to this, are very fortunate to have that whole foundation set in place where they could just infinitely scale. Right? It's like okay, well, what's the number one thing that's slowing me down here? Is it getting deposits? Is it ability to borrow? Is it all those things? Because the teams and everything is just set in place and the business is set there for it. And so for me, what I'll do is I'm going to pivot on the other side, which is if you were getting started, right, and you're listening to this now and you go, well, how do I evaluate everything against each other? And I know, Charley, I think we've got very similar points on this. the first thing that I would do when I'm evaluating assets that I'm looking to invest in is looking at the time allocation. And why would I care about that? Because I'm a business owner. I've spent like 15 years of my life perfecting business, making money in business. Like, so why would I want to take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days away from my ability to create income from my business to go and support an asset? I see that as fundamentally like step number one. Like if you're looking at an asset that requires more time, that will take you away from your business, for me, personally, in my opinion, I just wouldn't look at it because I was like, I don't have the time. Like it would.
Isn't that interesting? We've both shifted away from like what are the biggest returns I can get to like what fits us.
Yeah, because I know I can make money in business. I know I can bring in cash. I know I've got that skill set because I was sharp in that spear for so very, very, very long. So why, to your point, why would I stop? Why would I say I will only do that 2 days a week and I will go and do crypto, like learn how to do technical analysis on crypto? I'm like, well, then the 15 years I've spent building up this skill set kind of disappears.
I will say that I do think there is a very big value in actually understanding all assets and having foundational knowledge in all of them. I think that will make, just like in business, right? We can pick up like how a cafe runs. Like we fundamentally understand how a cafe runs or an e-commerce business runs. And that has value in running a service business or running an online business, right? So there's crossover values in the education. And I think everyone who is investing should get that education. But when it comes to comparing assets, I think it's more about what's right for you than what gets the biggest returns, because you're likely to get the best returns by having a strategy that applies to your situation.
100%. And I'll just summarize it in the sense of include your business as an asset in that comparison.
Wholeheartedly agree. Reinvesting in your business might be your biggest opportunity.
100%. Like maybe taking that money and getting more people, more sales guys, more delivery people, like that could be the better option. And so then you're just looking at, well, what is the asset value? What is the cash flow that I can derive from the asset? Like I would see that is some of the key evaluations for it, is like, what is the greatest use of your capital, depending on where you put it, as well as your ability to make it grow. Like Charley, you and I have got good experience in property, a great experience in property, but also fantastic experience in business. And we just said, let's double down. Like that's exactly what we're going to do because we had that skill set. Now, if you're skilled at shares because that's what your parents have done and that's what your family did and that's what everyone talks about and you've got all this, great. Like it's each to their own. It's more just being able to assess what are you going to give away in order to grow that, but also how does it align to your wealth goal as well.
I just want to put one more point here. One of the things I did is like I actively sought out people who were great at each of these. So like I have people doing well in property. I know people doing really well in shares, and I know people doing really well in crypto. And like I know people that are heavy into their super. They really, really put a lot of effort into their super and all that. And I've learned so much for talking with them and really understanding it. I would say for anyone listening to this podcast, it is worth you actively seeking out those people as well so you can have real conversations and get a better understanding of you. I'm not saying invest in these things because you probably won't invest in all of these things, but I think it is so powerful to give you that context in developing your own like ability to map out what's better or not better or more suited to you.
Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into being a full stack business owner, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.